Greetings and welcome to Matrix Revealed presentation 41. This is just a little illustration of a few things. For those that don't know what mud floods are, it basically works that you have a ground level, steps going up to an entrance, and there being like half windows sticking out, I think what they call egress windows. Now there's some wonderful evidence, you'll see this pretty much everywhere, and I want to give a shout out to Flatwater Films, who does some stunning presentations, superb sharp images from recent years, and no, there's no commentary, but there's some lovely music. But in having no commentary, it allows you to sort of look at the details and then just think to yourself, does it really make any sense? Now, something else a lot of people don't seem to be able to grasp. These are trees. They work on photosynthesis, which means they draw in carbon, which is their food, and they produce oxygen. They also need sunlight. Now there are two big giveaways as to what is controlled opposition, like Extinction Rebellion saying reduce carbon, and this huge scam about global warming. It's quite simple. Everything is a carbon life form, and if you reduce carbon to zero, that's goodbye to all life. Simple as that. So I wanted to get those 2 points out the way, and move on to the real topic that I wanted to talk about. Now I'm going to give a microscope view that highlights something much bigger. This, I can't really get it all in the camera, but basically this area here is Sussex. It's now split into East and West Sussex County Councils and the Unitary City Council of Brighton and Hove. But it takes its name, Sussex. It means South Saxon, or Siexa, which was a tribal group from the Saxony region of Germany. And retrospectively, this is why we have the county of Essex. There was the county of Middlesex, Sussex. There is an area vaguely described as Wessex, which isn't actually a county, although was a large area at one time in the west of the country. No north, nothing in the north, because that would be no sex, haha, and they would have died out within one generation. Anyway, a little bit of humour into this. But you just got to think about the logistics of this journey, this group that are described as South Saxons. You can think of this county as being like a country in its own right. What are they called? Sussex is divided into 6 what are known as rapes. Why they're called that is peculiar to this county, and then they're divided further into hundreds and then parishes. It's said to be that they're called hundreds because it was an area where they could muster 100 men, or it could support 100 families is the other theory behind that one. But thinking of the logistics of this, you've got this group that have migrated from northern Germany, brought all the livestock, all their families with them, and you have to think about the logic of all of this. They would have had to have foreknowledge, and to think that they've come all the way around the coast, the east coast, round East Anglia, because obviously the Angles, that's why it gets the name Anglia. Kent is the Jutes from what is now Denmark, Jutland area. The Sentai or Kentai tribe. There's said to be a separate group called the Hastingas, which is where Hastings is said to have got its name from. So they've come all the way round and they've landed at a place called Selsey. The only accounts of this are this Venerable Bede writing 500 years later, obviously with very much a religious and political bias to the story. So how much of it is true, and we cannot go by the dates. I can only use the official narrative on dates for illustration purposes, but I would take them with a pinch of salt. But what is really interesting with Sussex, you have all these place names and they break down, so they're normally the name of a Saxon settler as a prefix, and then a suffix. So like Worthing, the ing means belonging to the tribe of, so they are belonging to the tribe of, it's a corruption of, I think it was Werder. Now all the ing settlements, with the exception of Billingshurst and Stenning, are all on this coastal plain. Then you have the Sussex's own mountain range, the hills known as the Downs, the South Downs, that run pretty much across. Then beyond that, it was 90 miles across by 30 miles deep of thick forest. Now you have what is known as weald and clay, the weald. That comes from the Saxon word de wild, the wild. So as you go inland, you get hursts, which comes from the Saxon meaning a clearing on a clearing of wood on a hill. Now the other thing with Sussex is you've got the A21 from Hastings going northwards, you've got the A22 from Eastbourne, the A23 from Brighton, the A24 from Worthing, and so on. There's very few east-west roads in this county. It implies that the movement was coming from the coastal region. But what is interesting is we were supposed to have this Norman invasion in 1066 by William of Orange, who is a Norman or a Norseman, and yet very few places have French sounding names, the exception being somewhere like Herstmonceux. But pretty much everything else is a Saxon derived name. Now normally when you have a new occupying army that becomes the victors, they normally superimpose their interpretations of those place names, but this has not happened. So I question the narrative of history on that alone with all of this. There is also the questions of this population explosion in Northern Europe. You've got the Viking raids as well coming not long after as these Anglo-Saxon invasions that sort of swept in from the east and the south. And then what became the dominant of the Saxons, the West Saxons, the sort of Wessex area. Basically the country was split in half diagonally much further north. And it is another thing with the history. The 6 rapes take their names basically from Hastings' rape is Hastings as a castle. The next one is Pevensey, where there is a castle. Then you have Lewes, where there is a castle. Bramber, where there is a castle. Arundel, where there is a castle, and then Chichester has the cathedral. So the administration districts it was 6, hence the flag. I actually have one here with the Sussex martlets not sure how that's going to show up. It's basically blue and sort of gold and formed in a sort of downward triangle. That's the county flag. So just a few sort of little observations about this. It's very interesting what can be sort of gleaned when you consider Brighton, how different it is from many other places. Unscrambled Channel has covered quite a lot of places in and around Brighton, and definitely worth looking at. The chain link pier, big questions about with the official narrative about that. The very Russian looking mushroom domed, almost Middle Eastern palace is another very interesting structure, as is so much of Brighton, and also all the windmills and things, the electric railway, the electric tram that ploughed through up to 30 feet of water, known as the Daddy Longlegs. This is all on Unscrambled Channel, so do please have a look at the videos there for further details on that. But as you move further north, you get Hurst, and then you get Tun and Ham endings, meaning homestead and farmstead. I forget which is which. I always get them muddled up. I think Ham is derived from Heim, so that would be the homestead, and the Tun would be the farmstead. And another very interesting thing with Brighton, and I tried looking even in the Brighton History Centre to get a definitive answer of when it changed from Brighthelm Stone to Brighton, and I can only put that down to dialect. Now, 19th century writers note how Sussex had always been very insular. You've got the marshes that separate it from Kent, and then obviously at one time there would have been this huge forested area, and it's documented they would speak very Germanised English, so it would be "What is dat?" would be quite normal speech at one time. It's been very interesting with the family history, with all of this truth-seeking and spiritual awakening, and the basic rule is D and T are interchangeable, and F and V are interchangeable, which is another big clue with the spell and spelling of words. Something I thought of a little while ago was, as Martin Leaker, I think, has coined it, Antiquitech, all these spires and ironwork on these mansard roofs, on the tops of these old Tatarian buildings. And if you think about it, antique and then Antiquitech, instead of the E sound, it's more of an I sound, so it's a vowel shift. So perhaps that is helping to change the frequency and vibration. I do seriously believe this, that the truth-seeking channels and the spiritual awakening channels are all, from what they're speaking, regardless of how much is controlled opposition and what percentage is lies and what percentage is truth, it is sufficient with what is being told that is truth across every channel, is changing the frequency. Because out of that channel, then people talk, they comment, they're creating more sound vibration. This is how we are changing things, and this is why we have this rapid increase in all these spiritual downloads and this information coming through. But anyway, I've digressed right off of this topic, but it's very interesting, the road layouts, and then the bands of, you've got the clay, which is very good for oak, and how Sussex would have looked when you go over from that coastal plain and you go over the South Downs, and then you're faced with this forest, and you can see almost the way these roads have been formed by droving initially pigs into the forest to eat acorns, and then going back again to the coast for the harsh winter months until something is more established. And it's Saxon settlers' names, even to this day. That is the origins of these names. And then when you compare this to, say, Canada and the United States, well, probably all of South America, the names that these places have got now are probably totally different from what they were. And this sort of breaks that narrative, because that hasn't happened. We haven't had the French influenced names and renaming of settlements and things, which I find rather strange. Anyway, that's just a little sort of random video, something a little bit different. So I must also say a big shout out to Match C1234 Golf Channel. Please do go and have a look at her videos, listen to what she's saying, the channels that where she's sharing the information from as well. Sharing is caring, and we are changing things by speaking out and speaking our truth, regardless of what other people think of us and think we might be absolute crazy. But at the end of the day, we can all go down this route of, it's just me, what can I do? I can't change anything. Well, no, we're never going to change anything if we do think like that. So there's only one way to find out if that's true or not, and I don't think it needs to be down to one person. And there's so many people seeing so many different things now that we're not just one. We are as one, but we're fractalized into tiny little pieces of one. And collectively, not only do we come back together, collectively we're stronger, and we can make a real difference, and we can bring this heaven, make this heaven on earth rather than a hell on earth. It doesn't have to be the way it is now. We can see how it works enough and see what the problem is, where the problem is, and what needs to change. It's now the time of action, and I'm making this video on the 2nd of February 2020, so that's 02/02/2020. I thought, well, that was really the reason for doing a video, just to celebrate the 02/02/2020. I mean, that's in perfect balance. It's duality. It's a day to celebrate. Anyway, I shall leave that there and say ta-ta for now.